Good day, everybody. First of all, we want to welcome you in our webinar, AgileLAB webinar. Today, we have our special guest. We have Michele from Scaled Agile Inc. He is in the role of SAFE Strategic Advisor. And today we're going to talk about what does it really mean to be the Agile release train in SAFE. Good day, Michele.
Yeah, thank you, Vladimir. Thank you, Maksim, for inviting me, and thank you for hosting this webinar. And thank you also to the audience. So we are here today just for talking a little bit around the release train engineer, or RTE, as we used to call this role. And this is interesting because it's in particular is probably the most peculiar or particular role in SAFE, right? So it's very similar to the Scrum Master on a team. He's the one who is working with cross-functional teams and help them delivering the value on the Agile restraint level. Now, as I always say, the definition sounds easy, right? The job is not. And being an RT is actually a very hard job. And people normally in this role just need to bring together different talents, right? And normally, at least in my experience, these different talents are difficult to find in just one person, right? In my experience, I have to say, I have been working with many release train engineers in also smaller and bigger arts. And I've come up with kind of the 5 dimensions we should look at when talking about the release train engineers. The first one is definitely, and you have also here the definition, right? We were already talking about. And of course, there is also kind of other similar role outside of SAFE. So I have been hearing about Agile delivery lead or chief Scrum Master. You can definitely assimilate these roles to the release train engineers, but here is just more about the real SAFE role. And also you can see here in our big picture in the version 5 and the update 5.1 where the RT is defined, okay? But let's go back to these 5 dimensions. So the very first one is actually, at least in my experience and in my opinion, the so-called servant leadership. And I would probably say that the RT is the quintessence of servant leadership when we talk about the Agile restraint, right? He's definitely not the one who has the solution for everything, for every problem, or to the answer to every questions. But he is definitely the one who is create this environment of trust, of mutual trust, and definitely of psychological safety, so that every team actually within these environments can concentrate on value delivery and on what we call the relentless improvement, right? In this dimension, the focus is definitely on enabling the art being self-organized, which is also one of the principles that we know in SAFE. With the servant leadership, we definitely have pretty much connected what we call the empathy, right? Just because there is no servant leadership without empathy. And also because in the role of the RTE, the empathy needs to be there, not just because of what we call before, this environment of psychological safety, but it's just because he has to communicate to a lot of people inbound, so to all the teams working on the Agile restraint, but also, and even probably more important, outside, so outbound of the train, so all the stakeholders. Why is that important? Well, because normally in Agile restraint, at least in the beginning of the transformation, is embedded into a traditional world, so probably a waterfall world, right? And having these empathy and these facilitation skills towards stakeholders is pretty important, right? And this is one of the most important skills an RT needs to bring on the table. He is also the one who is integer, so he's a person of integrity, and he is also the one who needs to recognize conflicts within the teams or within the art, better said. And he also needs to enable these right conversations towards a solution, right? The focus is here definitely on fostering transparency and collaboration among the entire art, and obviously, as we said, beyond it, so towards the outside the train. The third dimension, and not definitely the less important one, is about value delivery. So in my experience and in my opinion, in most of the cases, I wouldn't say we lose the focus, but we definitely are not working towards, or not only towards, the value delivery, which is actually the mission of an agile restraint, right? So we are here not just to implement SAFe or to implement agile or to follow principle. We are here to deliver value. So the principle and the practices are helping us doing this. So the value delivery needs to be on focus. What does it mean? It means system thinking. I think this is the keywords here, right? So we need to think about the team of teams we have here, and also beyond this. So not just on single teams delivering this value. Means also that the RT needs to understand about flow management, about Kanban. So we have a value stream actually in which the art is embedded. So we say in SAFe, we organize the teams and the arts around of value. So it means the value stream is important for us. And definitely the release train engineer has to know how a value stream is working, where the value is flowing, and needs to understand all these entire flow of value, which means also his focus needs to be on identifying bottlenecks and being conscious of handoffs and dependencies between teams, but also outside of the train, most of the cases. So he's the person who has this ability to bring things together and to have this system thinking view. There is another aspect related to this, which is the cadence and synchronization. So he is definitely the one who needs to establish and manage this cadence and the synchronization between teams. And the last aspect is also related to who is consuming the work the art is generating. So the value is delivered to somebody, and this somebody has to be well known. And the RT needs also to focus on this. So stakeholder management was the keyword in the previous point, and here is definitely, again, important. So the focus here is in optimizing the entire system and not parts of it for the value delivery. The fourth dimension is definitely facilitation and execution, right? So we probably are focusing, when we talk about release train engineer, who is the one who needs to organize PI planning. So we have seen this is not just this one dimension, there is much more, but this is the more evident one, if you want. So means also connected with empathy. So the RT is the one event manager that is very professional and is very prepared just to, let's say, moderate a large group of people and bringing these people together, not just for PI planning, but all over the art events we might have, inspect and adapt, etc. Especially because, in my experience, inspect and adapt, sometimes you have a board member in there, right? And so you have to be well prepared, so you cannot improvise PI planning, definitely not. And especially I would say in this COVID time in which everything is remote, the technology is also a big piece of the preparation and the logistics, and it could be also a little bit more complicated than the normal. So here the focus is on run ceremonies and manage any delays and blockers you might have. The last dimension is all about coaching, right? So of course, the RT is embodying the Lean Agile principle and practices, and he has to encourage this new way of working within the train and also beyond. We were talking about stakeholders. So he's the one who is actively coaching Scrum Masters on the arts. So he cannot coach every single team members. This is then what Scrum Master is doing. But it's also the outbound part important. So a criticism versus safe is that we say the RT and the Scrum Master are not involved in propagating this new way of working into the organization, but this is actually not true. So the RT is embedding these practices and principles, not just inbound, so into the Agile release train, but also outbound, we say it, no, outside of the train, towards other stakeholders. That's very important to say. And I would say is also very different nurturing this tribe agility. So because when you are a Scrum Master on a team level, okay, you need to have facilitation skills, and you need to bring almost the similar skills as an RTE, but empowering a team of teams with 100, 150 people and making these people feels like part of one single train is a different sport, right? And here, the ultimate efforts is for the RT just bringing this to reality, make this possible, create this psychological safe environment, this mutual trust. So here the focus is definitely in helping the art as a whole and not as a bunch of competing teams to reach this excellence. So closing, I would say the release train engineer is also embedded in this, what I call the segregation of powers in Agile or in SAFe, in which you have product management on the art level, which is more focused on the product. You have the system architect, which is more focused on the technology, on the architecture, on giving the guidance to the people and establishing the framework in which teams can work and emerge what they need to do for delivering the value. And then you have the RT, which is much more focused on the organizational development, right? So as you can see, it's not easy to find a person with all these skills and all these different facets. In my experience also, you normally have not just one person doing this for two reasons. So first reason is because normally the train is not small. So 150 people, you might have two people have been working in big arts in which you had, or we had kind of art or RTE team. But also because when you do a transformation, you might want to coach on, or let's say, enable other people for future arts. And a good manner to do this is just work first as a shadow RTE in another train, and then start your own train. So my last point would be, so if you have a person in your organization with all these, let's call it skills, so you might find a way how to motivate him and make this person not leaving the company. So that would be my piece of advice.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So it's just really sounds like the RTE is a kind of unicorn. It's really hard to find a good RTE, and it's a crucial role inside the organization. But what do you think, from your personal experience? Is it better to have a company self-growth RTE who has maybe Scrum Master experience before and grow to become RTE, or it's better to engage someone who acts as Agile coach? and has a a bit different focus originally, but really correlates what with the stances you just mentioned, regarding RT roles. What's your probably favorite or recommended way for person to become RT?
I have a very strong opinion on that, also based on own experience. So I'm not a friend of bringing external RT into the organization. Of course, you need to build this role within your organization because it's also a new role. You probably have people with these skills. They are not called RTE. They are not in kind of similar position, but you can find the right people. And then my suggestion is always then bring a coach, but let the coach not doing the work. Okay. I like pretty much also learned in my previous time at Kegon. So we were pretty much concentrated in the RTE is doing the work and we are there just for supporting and asking the right questions, right? So this is the good work a coach is going to do, because the coach is after 6 months, after 1 year is gone, but the RTE is staying. This is the first piece of the advice. The second one, back to what I said before. So if you have more than one person, probably you have an RT in charge of the train, but having a coach on board and also kind of having another RT, another shadow RT or supporting RT is facilitating also this coaching experience. So learning all together. So the RT has a person, which is the coach, he can refer to. He will do also or ask the right questions, but then you have also another shoulder you can just trust, and you can have your sparring partners. And this is definitely, in my experience and in my opinion, also somebody who needs to be within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, but basically, what's the source of? We're saying it should be in-house. It should be grow. They should have opportunity to grow inside the organization. But what are the roles, or probably was the best to become RTs, as mentioned? So, kind of, it sounds like a natural way of growth for Scrum Master to become RT one day. Maybe yes, maybe wrong. But what's other opportunities? Who else can be a good RT? Who else can grow into the good RT inside the organization?
I can tell you my own experience. So, of course, what you said, Scrum Master and especially engaged Scrum Masters that want also to go this path down, because not every Scrum Master is wanting to get into this role. But I have been working with lots of Scrum Master that then become RT. I have been making a very good experience also with traditional project manager or program managers, right? So if you have people with the right attitude, with the right, I would say skills is important, but it's not that important. You can learn skills, but the attitude is, and the way of thinking is, the mentality is important, right? So if you have the right tone, if you have the right attitude, well, you can find pretty good release train engineers among traditional project managers and program managers. Another experience I've made is coaches, right? So you also have in many organizations agile coaches. It's not so common. So normally it's the way around. So RT wanting to become coaches within the organization. But I've made a few very good experience with coaches. They wanted just to go back and being again in charge of delivering this value we were talking about before. In some few cases, on top of this, there is also kind of external consultant, which is then staying in the company. This is also a very good pattern. So these are, at least in my experience, the source of good RTEs. So where they come from. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question here. So let's imagine that you're a coach in some organization, and one of the Scrum Masters was promoted to be an RTE, like we discussed here, who can be. And he just come to you and ask, so, hey, what should I do first? Can you give me a simple advice? What should be my two next steps like an RTE in this organization? I don't really understand what should start from.
Yeah, what changed in my life?
Yeah. What will you advise to this newcomer in RTE role?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Maxim, because I'm always, especially in the trains in which you have just this one person, and we have seen there are many things you should do. So most of the time, the 8 hours or not even the 10, 12 hours every day are enough. So I'm also fostering that the Scrum Master are actively supporting the RT. So taking care of moderating or supporting and facilitating events, or definitely during the INA, as they are involved 100%, but also helping kind of supporting beyond just the group facilitation, also during PI planning, so going just beyond the team support. So I'm fostering all the time, or trying to foster all the time, Scrum Master taking more out of their role, so towards the RT role. And then doing this, you will definitely not just identify possible RTEs, they are coming then to you and asking the question, Maxim, you were asking. I would definitely start from the facilitation, because it's the most natural one, and also the impediments management. So as we're not talking about this, but the RT is also there just not to solve every single problem, but to know where to go to solve or to address the problem. And this is something also Scrum Master is pretty used to on a team level. I would definitely also start from there. There are additional skills we have been talking about, kind of being able to facilitate events for a large group of people, which is on the one side also within a Scrum Master, you can just exercise this, but then is definitely something, it has to be compatible with your character, right? So I would say not every Scrum Master is possibly designated to be a good RT, because the dimensions are just different, right? So if you are a shy person, you probably could feel comfortable within a single team, but yet speaking in front of 150 people and going into the podium is different. Not everybody wants to do so, right? So this is also something I would test at the very beginning, if this person is also, I wouldn't say prepared to do this, but at least willing to do this and train, because as always, skills can be trained. And that's also the reason, coming back again to this, when you have just more than one release train engineers working on the same train, just supporting each other. Yeah.
Can I ask you some other question?
Of course.
Can we say that RTE is a new name, or I don't want to say name maybe, but a new model of management or leader for the organization? So it's a kind of involvement or change of the classical manager, project manager, program manager, to the new way how we see the leader, the manager, was it actually kind of powerless leader inside the organization?
Well, that's a very good question, Vladimir. I think there are two dimensions to be considered. So the first answer to your question is definitely yes. I mean, this is the new type of leaders, if you want, that we need to establish in our organizations. On the other side, we have to think about the shift we need to have as well, because until now we were talking about, we have program managers, we have project managers, and these people are in charge of everything, right? They are in charge of the people, in charge of the value delivery, in charge of the numbers, in charge of the timing, in charge of the budgets, and in charge of the quality, let's say. And at the very end, also in charge of the product or the service we are delivering, right? It's kind of the king of the delivery. So he's deciding on everything, and he can do trade-offs. So I sacrifice quality for versus time to market, and I sacrifice people versus numbers, okay? So the shift we are proposing with the Lean Agile approach and with SAFe is shifting from these one person is deciding everything into decentralized decision making, but also this what I call the democratization of decision making. Because as we were mentioning very early, so we have always these three dimensions, this segregation of powers. We have product owners, product managers focus more on the what, the product, what is the value we need to deliver to our customers. Customer means whoever is consuming the work. So is pretty much the product dimension, the what dimension. Then we have the technical dimension, so which is pretty much related if we talk about software, yeah, about what we build, the architecture, the infrastructure, or if we are building devices. So cyber physical system is also related to the design and to the functionalities, okay? But this is pretty much related to the technical part. And then we have definitely, which is normally not really considered, and I see definitely the RT evolving into or towards this, is the organizational design, right? So we talk all the time about technical depth. For this technical dimension, we talk all the time about your product depth in terms of we need to be on the market, we need to beat our competitors, but we never talk about organizational depth, right? So in today's challenging world, we do not just need the best product and being agile in terms of business agility, being able to pivot and to adapt ourselves quickly. But we need a new organizational structure for doing this. So if we work in a traditional way, we will never be able to be that quick and that flexible and agile. So the RT is definitely one of these kind of leaders, which is making this possible, but also knowing that he is just focusing on the organizational part, not on the product part, not on the technical part. Of course, he's the person who needs to generate this environment in which all these three dimensions are well working together, but it's pretty much focused on the organizational development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Max, last minute
Yeah,
question?
I have one question. We discussed that RTE can be, like Scrum Master can be promoted, and Scrum Master is very close in day-to-day work activities with RTE, so he can understand on essential level what RTE should do. But what about portfolio level? How RTE can help portfolio level guys to do their work better? Because it's, from my experience, it is a really big challenge for promoted Scrum Masters to understand what is going on that level, because he is focused always on the team and the essential level. He don't know about portfolio anything. What can you tell about it?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting topic, because of course, when we talk about SAFe, we are also generally talking about big organizations, right? And even if we say, as well as Scrum is saying, that the Scrum Master is the person who is not just focusing on the team, but is also, let's say, bringing the new way of working, bringing the practices and the principles into the organization. This is something we also support, definitely. The limit is when you have a very big organization, it's difficult just that one single Scrum Master can in some way influence or can get in contact and coach also stakeholder outside of the team. I see here definitely the RT being these kind of person, but also the Scrum Master itself. So, and not just as single person. So I really believe in SAFe. The other construct we have this, and it's not an invention of SAFe, but the community of practice can bring an organization really forward. So just bringing the people with the most advanced, let's say, skills or experience that are then also embracing the others and showing the others. So this is the way we are working. This is the way you could also start working and started this kind of dialogue, right? So you were mentioning before the portfolio layer. Of course, you have change leaders within your organization. Of course, you have coaches or enterprise coaches who are supporting this, but you definitely need to bring the portfolio layer together with the execution layer, right? Because if this connection is not there, then it's not going to work, right? So back to your question, I think the RT is definitely this one crucial person who is bringing these two layers together, but is more organization-wide. So establishing this community of practice, establishing this room also for continuous learning, for continuous evolving the organization. And I see this community of practice also, and back probably to your very first question. So should we have people within the organization covering these roles, or not just the RT roles, but also the Scrum Master? The community of practice are also a very good place in which not so experienced Scrum Master can learn from the others. So I'm always trying to find a balance, because you don't have many Scrum Master in your organization. And my opinion is try to bring also external Scrum Master, at least a couple of them, into a newly launched Agile Restraint, just for supporting the other Scrum Master and enabling them also using the community of practice. So kind of balance. So community of practice are definitely a good tool, a good mechanism for bringing these two layers together. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all.